The invitation to Derek and Michelle's anniversary party sat on our kitchen counter for 3 weeks, mocking me with its gold embossed lettering. My wife Sandra had been planning her outfit since the moment it arrived, treating it like some red carpet event instead of a suburban house party thrown by people who peaked in college. "You're wearing the blue shirt," Sandra announced, not asked, as she applied her third layer of mascara in our bedroom mirror. "The one that makes you look less, you know?" "Less like myself?" I asked, adjusting my tie. At 42, I'd learned to pick my battles with Sandra. After 15 years of marriage, I knew when to fight and when to just smile and nod like a well-trained dog. "Less like you just crawled out from under a car," she said, spraying enough perfume to choke a horse. "These are important people, Jake. Derek's firm handles million-dollar contracts." I ran a small security consulting business, mostly installing alarm systems and doing background checks for local companies. Not exactly Fortune 500 material, but it paid our bills and kept me sane. Sandra worked as a paralegal at a mid-tier law firm, but she talked about it like she was arguing cases before the Supreme Court. The doorbell rang, saving me from another lecture about my career choices. "That's Emma," Sandra said, suddenly nervous. "Remember what we talked about. She's going through a rough patch with the divorce, so just be nice." Emma was Sandra's younger sister, visiting from New York for the first time in 2 years. The divorce Sandra mentioned was Emma's second, and according to family gossip, it was getting ugly. Real ugly, with lawyers and private investigators and frozen assets. I opened the door to find Emma looking nothing like the broken woman Sandra had described. At 35, she was still striking, with Sandra's same dark hair but sharper features and eyes that seemed to see right through whatever bullshit you were selling. She wore a black dress that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. "Well, well," Emma said, looking me up and down. "Jake the security guy, still fixing broken things for a living?" "Someone has to," I replied. "How's the Big Apple treating you?" "Like a rotten core," she said, stepping inside without being invited. "But that's what lawyers are for, right?" Sandra appeared at the top of the stairs like some kind of suburban princess, all flowing fabric and jewelry that caught the light. "Emma, you look amazing." The sisters hugged with the kind of forced enthusiasm that screamed unresolved issues. I'd been around enough family drama to recognize the warning signs. "Ready to party?" Sandra asked, grabbing her purse and checking her reflection one more time. "Oh, I'm ready for something," Emma said, and I caught her looking at me again with that same evaluating stare. The drive to Derek and Michelle's place took 20 minutes through our subdivision's winding streets. Sandra chattered nervously about who would be there, what they did for work, how much money they made. Emma sat in the back seat, mostly silent except for the occasional sarcastic comment that sailed right over Sandra's head. Derek and Michelle lived in one of those McMansions that screamed, "We have money but no taste." The circular driveway was already packed with BMWs, Mercedes, and the occasional Tesla. Sandra practically vibrated with excitement as we walked up to the front door. "Remember," she whispered to me, "smile, be charming, and don't talk about work unless someone asks. And if they do ask, make it sound more important than it is." The party was already in full swing when we arrived. The house was packed with Sandra's coworkers, Derek's business associates, and various hangers-on who looked like they'd stepped out of a catalog for successful suburban professionals. The bar was set up in the living room, tended by an actual bartender who probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Sandra immediately gravitated toward the bar, ordering something complicated with multiple liquors. I grabbed a beer and found a spot where I could watch the room without getting trapped in conversation with someone trying to sell me life insurance or a timeshare. Emma appeared beside me, holding what looked like straight whiskey. "Quite a scene," she said, surveying the crowd. Sandra always did love playing dress-up. "She's having fun," I said, watching my wife laugh too loudly at something one of her male co-workers had said. "Is she?" Emma asked. "Or is she performing?" Before I could answer, Sandra was on the dance floor, moving to some generic pop song with Tom Bradley from her office. Tom was one of those guys who thought his law degree made him irresistible to women. Married, 2 kids, but he wore his wedding ring like it was optional. "She's always been like this at parties," Emma said, reading my expression. "Even in high school. Gets a few drinks in her and suddenly she's the star of her own movie." I watched Sandra grind against Tom like they were alone in the room instead of surrounded by their coworkers. My jaw tightened, but I forced myself to stay calm. Making a scene would only make things worse. "Doesn't that bother you?" Emma asked. "She's just having fun," I repeated, but the words tasted like ash in my mouth. An hour passed. Sandra moved from partner to partner on the dance floor, each dance getting more intimate than the last. I nursed my beer and tried to ignore the sympathetic looks from other wives in the room. Emma stayed beside me, a silent witness to my humiliation. Then Sandra did something that changed everything. Standing in the middle of the dance floor, surrounded by a group of men, including Tom Bradley and Derek himself, she raised her drink high in the air and announced loud enough for the entire room to hear, "Tonight, I'm single." She pointed directly at me sitting on the couch. "I don't know that guy." The men around her laughed and cheered, encouraging her performance. The music seemed to get louder, the room spinning slightly as the full weight of her words hit me. She just publicly humiliated me in front of 50 people, most of whom we'd have to see again at future social events. I felt Emma shift beside me, her body going rigid with tension. When I looked at her, her face had transformed from mildly amused to something predatory. She stood up suddenly, her whiskey glass still in hand, and walked deliberately across the room toward me. Every eye in the place was watching now, sensing drama in the air like sharks smelling blood. Emma sat down next to me on the couch, close enough that her thigh pressed against mine. She looked directly at her sister, who had stopped dancing and was watching with growing confusion. "Then I'm with you tonight," Emma said, her voice carrying clearly across the room despite the music. The effect was immediate and electric. Sandra's face went white, then red, then white again. The men she'd been dancing with looked back and forth between the sisters like they were watching a tennis match. "What?" Sandra laughed nervously, stepping toward us. "Emma, what are you doing?" Emma took my hand in hers, her fingers intertwining with mine. Her skin was warm and soft, and I found myself not pulling away. "You're single, right?" Emma said, her voice sweet as poisoned honey. "So, he's available." Sandra tried to laugh it off, but the sound came out strangled. "Very funny, Em. Real mature." Emma wasn't laughing. Her grip on my hand tightened, and she leaned into me slightly, her shoulder touching mine. "I'm completely serious." "Emma, stop," Sandra said, walking over to us. The music had died down, and conversations throughout the room had stopped as people turned to watch the drama unfold. "Why?" Emma asked innocently. "You're single, remember? You announced it to everyone. You don't know him." She gestured toward the men Sandra had been grinding against. "Go back to your new friends." Sandra's eyes darted around the room, finally realizing that her joke had backfired spectacularly. "I was just having fun. Tell her, Jake. Tell her it's not funny." I looked up at my wife, this woman who had just publicly humiliated me for the entertainment of her coworkers, and shrugged. "You said you're single." The words hit Sandra like a physical blow. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, searching for something to say that would undo what she'd done. Emma stood up, still holding my hand, and pulled me toward the dance floor. "Come on, let's dance." I followed her, partly out of shock and partly out of a growing anger that I'd been suppressing all evening. As we reached the center of the room, Emma turned to face me, placing her arms around my neck exactly the way Sandra had done with Tom Bradley. "She doesn't deserve you," Emma whispered, close enough that I could feel her breath on my ear. "I've always thought that." We swayed to the music, and I found myself looking over Emma's shoulder at Sandra, who stood frozen in the middle of the dance floor. The men she'd been flirting with had already moved on, finding other entertainment. Her friends from work were watching with expressions that ranged from shock to barely concealed amusement. "Emma, I've always thought that," I heard myself say, the words surprising me as much as they seemed to surprise Emma. She pulled back to look at me, her dark eyes searching my face. Then she did something that sent shockwaves through the room. She kissed my cheek, slowly and deliberately, making sure everyone could see. Sandra lost her mind. "Stop it right now," she screamed, pushing through the crowd toward us. "Both of you, stop it." Emma turned to face her sister calmly, her arms still around my neck. "Why? I'm just having fun." She used Sandra's own words against her, each syllable sharp as a knife. "With a single man." Tears were streaming down Sandra's face now, her carefully applied makeup running in black streaks. "This isn't funny anymore." "Was it ever?" Emma asked. "Because from where I'm standing, humiliating your husband in front of all these people wasn't very funny either." The room had gone completely silent except for the soft background music. 50 people watched as Sandra's world crumbled around her, the consequences of her joke playing out in real time. "Please," Sandra whispered, looking at me with desperation. "Can we just go home?" I looked at Emma, who was still pressed against me, then back at my wife. For 15 years, I'd been the good husband, the one who smiled and nodded and never made waves. Tonight, something had shifted. "Stay," Emma said quietly, but loud enough for Sandra to hear. I nodded. Sandra stood there for another moment, tears falling freely now, before turning and pushing through the crowd toward the exit. I heard Michelle call after her, but Sandra didn't stop. The party continued around us, but the energy had changed. People were talking in hushed tones, shooting glances our way when they thought we weren't looking. Emma and I stayed on the dance floor for another song, neither of us speaking, both of us processing what had just happened. When the song ended, Emma finally stepped back. "That was her last joke," she said simply. I nodded, knowing she was right. Something fundamental had broken tonight, and there would be no going back to the way things were. I drove home alone that night. Emma had caught a ride with Michelle, claiming she needed to let things cool down before facing Sandra. Smart woman. I wasn't looking forward to the conversation waiting for me either. The house was dark when I pulled into our driveway, but I could see the glow of the television through the living room window. Sandra was awake, probably rehearsing whatever speech she planned to give me about how everything was my fault. I sat in my truck for a few minutes, engine ticking as it cooled, trying to process the evening's events. In the space of 2 hours, my marriage had imploded in front of 50 witnesses. Sandra's joke about being single had opened a door that couldn't be closed again. The front door was unlocked. I found Sandra on the couch, still in her party dress, but with her makeup scrubbed off and her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked younger without all the war paint, more like the woman I'd married 15 years ago. "We need to talk," she said without looking at me. "Yeah, we do." I grabbed a beer from the kitchen and sat in the recliner across from her, maintaining distance. "What happened tonight was," she started, then stopped, searching for words. "Humiliating?" I suggested. "Cruel? Calculated?" "I was drunk," she said defensively. "It was just a joke. You know I didn't mean anything by it." "Do I?" I took a long pull from my beer. "Because from where I was sitting, it looked like you meant every word, especially the part where you told everyone you didn't know me." Sandra's face crumpled. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Jake. I don't know what came over me. The drinks, the atmosphere, everyone was having such a good time." "So you decided to throw your husband under the bus for a laugh?" "No, it wasn't like that. I wanted to feel young again, desirable, like I mattered. And I make you feel old and undesirable." She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. "Sometimes." The honesty hit harder than I'd expected. Well, at least we're being honest now. "What Emma did was worse," Sandra said, deflecting. "She deliberately tried to hurt me. She's always been jealous of what we have." "What we have?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Sandra, you just told a room full of people that you're single and you don't know me. What exactly do we have?" "A marriage, 15 years together, a house, a life, shared history. And apparently, that's not enough to stop you from humiliating me in public." Sandra stood up and started pacing, her party dress rustling with each step. "Emma poisoned you against me. She saw an opportunity and took it. She's been waiting for something like this." "Something like what?" "A chance to break us up. She's always had a thing for you, Jake. Even back when we were dating, she'd flirt with you right in front of me." I thought back to our early relationship, trying to remember any signs of inappropriate behavior from Emma. There had been some playful banter, maybe a few comments that walked the line, but nothing I'd considered serious. "Even if that's true," I said, "it doesn't excuse what you did tonight." I know it doesn't. But we can fix this. We can work through it. People will forget about the party eventually." "Will they?" "Because I'm pretty sure Tom Bradley and Derek and everyone else from your office will remember the night Sandra Morrison announced she was single and her sister stole her husband." Sandra flinched at my blunt assessment, but I wasn't done. "And what about the next party? The next work function? Every time we walk into a room together, people are going to remember tonight. They're going to wonder if we're really together or just pretending." "So what are you saying?" Sandra's voice was rising, panic creeping in. "You want a divorce? You want to throw away 15 years because of one stupid mistake?" "I'm saying I need time to think, and space." "Space?" "I'm sleeping in the guest room tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure out what comes next." Sandra's face went white. "Jake, please, don't do this. We can fix it. I'll do whatever it takes. Right now, I can't even look at you without seeing you on that dance floor, announcing to everyone that you're single. So yeah, I need space." I stood up and headed for the stairs, leaving my half-finished beer on the coffee table. "She planned this," Sandra called after me. "Emma planned this whole thing. She knew exactly what she was doing." I stopped at the bottom of the stairs and turned back. "Maybe she did, but you gave her the opportunity." The guest room felt like a hotel room, sterile and impersonal. I'd slept there maybe 3 times in 15 years, usually when I was sick and Sandra didn't want to catch whatever bug I had. Now it felt like exile. I lay awake most of the night, replaying the evening's events. Sandra's announcement, the laughter from her coworkers, the way Emma had looked at me when she said I deserved better. The feel of Emma's hand in mine, warm and sure, while my wife danced with other men. Around 3 in the morning, I heard Sandra crying through the thin walls. Part of me wanted to go to her, to comfort her like I had countless times before, but a larger part of me was still too angry, too hurt by her public betrayal. I must have dozed off eventually because I woke to the smell of bacon and coffee. Sandra was making breakfast, probably thinking she could fix everything with my favorite meal. It was such a typical Sandra move that I almost smiled, despite everything. She was standing at the stove when I entered the kitchen, still in her robe, hair pulled back. She looked fragile in the morning light, younger and more vulnerable than she had in years. "I made your favorite," she said without turning around. "Bacon, eggs over easy, wheat toast." "Thanks." I poured myself coffee and sat at the kitchen table, maintaining distance. She plated the food and set it in front of me, then sat across the table with her own cup of coffee. "Did you sleep at all?" "Some." I took a bite of eggs. They were perfect, exactly the way I liked them. Sandra might have been a lot of things, but she'd always been a good cook. "I've been thinking all night," she said. "About what you said, about needing space. I understand why you're angry, but running away isn't going to solve anything." "I'm not running away. I'm trying to process what happened." "What happened is that I made a stupid mistake. A drunk, thoughtless mistake that I regret more than anything I've ever done. But it was just words, Jake. Just stupid words." "Words matter, Sandra. Especially when you say them in front of 50 people. She was quiet for a moment, stirring her coffee absently. "What do you want me to do? How do I fix this?" "I don't know if you can." The words hung in the air between us like a physical barrier. Sandra's face crumpled, and for a moment I thought she might start crying again. Instead, she straightened up, squaring her shoulders. "Fine," she said, "if that's how you want to play it. But don't think Emma is some innocent victim in all this. She knew exactly what she was doing last night." "Maybe she did, but she didn't force you to humiliate me." "No, she just took advantage of it, like she always does." I finished my breakfast in silence, then stood to put my plate in the dishwasher. "I'm going to the office for a while. I need to think. It's Saturday. I know what day it is." Sandra followed me to the front door, wrapping her robe tighter around herself. "How long is this going to go on? The silent treatment, the separate rooms, the cold shoulder?" "I don't know. That's not an answer." I turned to face her, keys in hand. "It's the only answer I have right now." My office was in a small strip mall between a dry cleaner and a sandwich shop. Morrison Security Consulting wasn't much to look at from the outside, but it was mine. I'd built it from nothing after leaving the police force 8 years ago, and it provided a decent living for Sandra and me. The office was quiet on Saturday morning, just the hum of computers and the distant sound of traffic. I made fresh coffee and sat at my desk, trying to focus on paperwork, but my mind kept drifting back to the party. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hope you're okay. Last night was intense. E." Emma. Somehow she'd gotten my number, probably from Sandra's phone. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. "I'm fine. Thanks for asking. Want to talk? I'm staying at the Marriott downtown. Room 412. I set the phone down and tried to get back to work, but the invitation hung in the air like a challenge. Emma wanted to talk, presumably about what had happened at the party and what it meant going forward. The smart thing would be to delete the message and pretend it never happened. Go home, work things out with Sandra, try to rebuild what we'd had before last night. But I couldn't stop thinking about the way Emma had looked at me when she said I deserved better. The certainty in her voice, the conviction that Sandra had been wrong to treat me the way she had. At 2 o'clock, I locked up the office and drove downtown. The Marriott downtown was the kind of place Sandra and I might stay for a special anniversary if we were feeling particularly flush. Emma had booked a suite on the 4th floor with a view of the city skyline and furniture that probably cost more than my truck. She answered the door in jeans and a sweater, looking more casual than I'd ever seen her. Without the party makeup and expensive dress, she looked younger, more approachable. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she said, stepping aside to let me in. I wasn't sure either. The suite had a sitting area with a couch and chairs arranged around a coffee table. Emma had ordered room service, sandwiches, fruit, a bottle of wine that was probably worth more than I made in a week. "Hungry?" she asked. "Not really." I sat on the couch, maintaining what I hoped was appropriate distance. Emma poured herself a glass of wine and settled into the chair across from me. "So, that was quite a night." That's one way to put it. How's Sandra this morning? Remorseful? Angry? Blaming me for everything? I looked at Emma more closely, trying to read her expression. She thinks you planned the whole thing. Did she? Emma smiled, but there was something sharp in it. And what do you think? I think you saw an opportunity and took it. Smart man? She took a sip of wine, watching me over the rim of her glass. Though to be fair, Sandra handed me that opportunity on a silver platter. Why? I asked. Why did you do it? Emma set down her glass and leaned forward, her expression growing serious. Because I've been watching my sister treat you like garbage for 15 years, and last night was the final straw. Sandra doesn't treat me like garbage. Doesn't she? Emma's voice was gentle but firm. Jake, I've seen how she talks to you, how she dismisses your opinions, belittles your work, makes you feel small. Last night was just the most public example. I wanted to argue, to defend my wife and my marriage, but the words wouldn't come, because deep down, I knew Emma was right. She used to be different, I said finally. When we first got married, she was supportive, encouraging. People change. Sandra changed. She got comfortable, took you for granted, started looking for something more exciting. Like Tom Bradley? Emma's expression darkened. Among others. The words hit me like a physical blow. What do you mean, among others? Emma was quiet for a long moment, clearly debating how much to tell me. Jake, there are things about Sandra that you don't know, things she's been hiding. What things? The flirting at parties isn't new. It's been going on for years. And it's not always just flirting. My stomach dropped. Are you saying she's been cheating? I'm saying Sandra has a pattern of behavior that goes back to college. She gets bored, starts looking for excitement elsewhere, and then comes back to her safe choice when things get complicated. And I'm the safe choice. You're the good man who loves her unconditionally and puts up with her shit. Yes. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. Cars moved through the streets like ants. Everyone going somewhere, everyone with purpose. I felt adrift, unmoored from everything I thought I knew about my life. Why are you telling me this? I asked without turning around. Because you deserve better. Because you deserve to know the truth. And what truth is that? That Sandra doesn't love you the way you love her. She loves the security you provide, the stability, the fact that you'll always be there no matter how badly she treats you. But she doesn't love you. I turned back to face Emma. And you do? The question hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. Emma met my gaze steadily, not flinching from the challenge. I think I could, she said quietly, if you gave me the chance. Emma, I know how this looks. I know the timing is terrible. But Jake, what happened last night wasn't just about revenge against Sandra. It was about finally being honest about something I've felt for years. You barely know me. I know you better than you think. I know you're loyal to a fault. I know you work hard and take care of the people you love. I know you deserve someone who appreciates those qualities instead of taking them for granted. She stood up and walked over to where I was standing by the window. I know you felt something last night when we were dancing. Don't try to tell me you didn't. She was right. There had been something electric about holding Emma, about the way she'd looked at me like I was worth fighting for. It had been years since Sandra had looked at me that way. This is crazy, I said. You're my wife's sister. My sister who just announced to a room full of people that she's single and doesn't know you. Emma reached out and touched my arm gently. Jake, I'm not asking you to run away with me tonight. I'm asking you to consider the possibility that there's something better out there than a marriage to someone who doesn't value you. My phone buzzed with a text message. Sandra. Where are you? We need to talk. I'm sorry about everything. Please come home. Emma saw me reading the message. She's scared. She knows she went too far last night, and now she's trying to do damage control. Maybe she means it. Maybe she really is sorry. Of course she's sorry. She's sorry she got caught showing her true colors in public. But Jake, being sorry and being willing to change are two different things. I looked at the message again, then at Emma's face. She was giving me a choice, clearly and honestly. Go back to Sandra and try to rebuild something that might have been broken long before last night, or take a chance on something new and uncertain. I need time to think, I said. Emma nodded. I understand, but don't take too long. I'm only in town for another week. And then what? Then I go back to New York, and you go back to your life with Sandra, and we pretend last night never happened. The drive home felt longer than usual, every traffic light giving me more time to think about Emma's words. Was she right about Sandra? Had my wife been taking me for granted? treating me like a convenient accessory to her life rather than a partner? The evidence was hard to ignore. The way she dismissed my opinions, criticized my appearance, made jokes at my expense in front of friends. The way she'd been increasingly distant over the past few years, more interested in her work friends than in spending time with me. And now, last night's public humiliation, followed by her attempts to minimize it as just a joke. Sandra was waiting for me when I got home, dressed nicely and with dinner already prepared. She'd set the table with our good china and lit candles, clearly hoping to recreate some kind of romantic atmosphere. "Welcome home," she said, forcing a smile. "I made your favorite, pot roast with carrots and potatoes." "Thanks." I sat down at the table, noting how hard she was trying to act normal. "So, where did you go today? The office?" "Yeah, just catching up on some paperwork." "On a Saturday?" "You know how it is. Small business owner, no days off." She nodded, but I could see the suspicion in her eyes. Sandra had always been good at reading people, and she knew something was off. We ate in relative silence, making small talk about the weather and weekend plans. It felt forced and artificial, like we were actors playing the roles of a married couple. "Jake," Sandra said finally, setting down her fork, "I know you're still angry about last night, and you have every right to be. What I did was wrong, and I'm sorry. More sorry than I can express." "Okay. But I need to know where we go from here. Are we going to work through this, or are you going to punish me forever?" I looked across the table at this woman I'd been married to for 15 years. She was still beautiful, still the same person I'd fallen in love with in college, but something fundamental had shifted, and I wasn't sure it could be shifted back. "I don't know," I said honestly. "That's not good enough, Jake. I made a mistake. A terrible, hurtful mistake. But it was one night. One stupid decision." "Are you really going to throw away our entire marriage over that?" "It's not just about last night, Sandra." "Then what is it about?" I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. "It's about the pattern, the way you've been treating me for years. Last night was just the most public example." Sandra's face flushed red. "Pattern? What pattern? I've been a good wife to you." "Have you? When was the last time you asked about my work without making a joke about it? When was the last time you introduced me to someone without apologizing for what I do for a living? That's not... I don't... When was the last time you looked at me the way you looked at Tom Bradley last night?" The question hit home. Sandra's mouth opened and closed, searching for an answer that wouldn't incriminate her further. "I see," I said, standing up from the table. "Thanks for dinner. It was great, as always." "Jake, wait. Don't walk away from me." "I'm not walking away. I'm just done talking for tonight." "You can't keep doing this. You can't keep shutting me out." I turned back to face her. "Watch me." That night, lying in the guest room again, I thought about Emma's offer. Not just the romantic possibility, but the chance to start over with someone who saw value in who I was, rather than constantly wishing I was someone else. My phone buzzed with another text from Emma. "Thinking about you. Hope you're okay." This time, I responded immediately. "Can we meet tomorrow? I want to talk more." "Of course. Same place, same time?" "Yes." I set the phone down and stared at the ceiling, knowing I was about to cross a line that would change everything. But maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. Maybe it was time for everything to change. Sunday morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching my mood perfectly. Sandra had left early for her yoga class, leaving a note about how we needed to reconnect and find our way back to each other. The note was signed with a heart, like we were teenagers passing messages in study hall. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, reading the newspaper and trying to pretend my life wasn't falling apart. The sports section held my attention for about 30 seconds before my mind wandered back to Emma's hotel room and the conversation waiting for me there. Sandra returned from yoga in full reconciliation mode, chattering about her class and the healthy smoothie she'd picked up afterward. She was trying so hard to act normal that it was almost painful to watch. "I was thinking we could do something together today," she said, bouncing slightly on her toes. "Maybe drive out to the lake? We haven't done that in ages." "I can't today. I have some work stuff to catch up on." "More work? Jake, it's Sunday. Can't it wait until tomorrow?" "It's important." Sandra's face fell, but she forced another smile. "Okay. Well, maybe tonight then? We could order takeout, watch a movie." "Maybe." The deflection hit its mark. Sandra's fake cheerfulness cracked slightly, revealing the desperation underneath. "Jake, please, talk to me. Really talk to me. I know I screwed up Friday night, but we can fix this. We can fix us." I looked at my wife, really looked at her, trying to see the woman I'd fallen in love with 15 years ago. She was still there, buried under layers of ambition and social climbing and whatever it was that had made her think humiliating me in public was acceptable behavior. Sandra, can I ask you something? Of course. Anything. Do you love me? The question caught her off guard. She blinked several times, clearly not expecting such a direct approach. What kind of question is that? Of course I love you. We're married. That's not what I asked. I asked if you love me. Not if you love being married, or love the security, or love having someone to split the bills with. Do you love me? Sandra sat down across from me, her yoga outfit suddenly looking ridiculous in the harsh kitchen light. Jake, where's this coming from? Of course I love you. You're my husband. When was the last time you told me that? When was the last time you said the words I love you without it being a response to me saying it first? Sandra opened her mouth to answer, then closed it again. I could see her thinking, trying to remember, and coming up empty. I show you I love you in other ways, she said finally. I cook for you, I take care of the house, You perform the functions of a wife. That's not the same thing as love. That's not fair. Isn't it? Sandra, be honest with me. If I wasn't here, if something happened to me tomorrow, would you miss me, or would you miss having a husband? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Sandra's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't answer immediately. I would miss you, she said quietly. I would miss you terribly. Would you? Or would you miss the idea of me? Stop it, Jake. Stop trying to trap me with word games. I'm not trying to trap you. I'm trying to understand something that's been bothering me for a long time. I stood up and put my coffee mug in the sink, then turned back to face her. I'm going out for a while. We'll talk more later. Where are you going? Does it matter? Sandra's face crumpled, and for a moment I felt guilty for being so harsh. But the guilt passed quickly, replaced by a strange sense of liberation. For the first time in years, I was being completely honest about my feelings instead of protecting hers. The drive to the Marriott gave me time to think about what I was doing. Meeting Emma again was a betrayal of my marriage, even if nothing physical happened. But then again, Sandra had already betrayed our marriage in front of 50 witnesses. Emma answered the door wearing a different sweater and the same jeans, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked comfortable and relaxed, like she'd been expecting me. How did it go with Sandra? She asked as I settled onto the couch. About as well as you'd expect. She's in full damage control mode, trying to pretend Friday night was just a momentary lapse in judgment. And you don't believe that? I think Friday night was Sandra being more honest than she's been in years. Emma poured 2 glasses of wine, even though it was barely noon. So what now? I don't know. That's why I'm here. I need someone to help me think this through. Okay, let's think it through. What do you want, Jake? Not what you think you should want, or what would be easiest, or what would make other people happy. What do you actually want? The question was harder to answer than it should have been. I'd spent so many years focusing on what Sandra wanted, what would make her happy, what would keep the peace, that I'd lost track of my own desires. I want to feel like I matter, I said finally. I want to be with someone who values me for who I am, not who they wish I could be. And do you feel that way with Sandra? No, I haven't felt that way in a long time. Emma moved from her chair to the couch, sitting close enough that I could smell her perfume. It was different from Sandra's, warmer and less aggressive. Can I tell you something? She asked. Sure. I've been attracted to you since the day Sandra first brought you home. You were this confident, funny guy who treated everyone with respect and didn't seem to care about impressing anyone. I was 19 and thought you were the most interesting man I'd ever met. Emma, let me finish. I watched you marry my sister, and I was happy for both of you. Sandra was lucky to find someone like you, and I thought you two would be great together. She paused, choosing her words carefully. But over the years, I watched her change you. Watched her chip away at your confidence, make you smaller, to turn you into this apologetic version of yourself. And I hated it. I hated watching someone I cared about disappear piece by piece. So Friday night was what, a rescue mission? Friday night was me reaching my breaking point. When she announced that she was single and didn't know you, in front of all those people, I couldn't just sit there and watch anymore. Emma reached out and took my hand, the same way she had at the party. Jake, I meant what I said. I think I could love you. I think I already do, a little. This is insane. You're my wife's sister. My wife who publicly disowned you Friday night. Even so, the complications, the family drama, the what? The chance to be happy? Emma leaned closer, her face inches from mine. Jake, I'm not asking you to make a decision right now. I'm asking you to consider the possibility that there's something better than what you have with Sandra. And if I consider it, then what? Then we see where it leads. She kissed me then, softly and tentatively, giving me the chance to pull away if I wanted to, but I didn't want to. For the first time in years, I felt wanted, desired, valued for who I was, rather than tolerated despite my flaws. When we broke apart, Emma searched my face for regret or guilt. She didn't find any. Wow, I said. Good wow or bad wow? Definitely good wow. We spent the next hour talking, really talking, about everything from our childhoods to our dreams for the future. Emma was smart and funny and engaged in a way that Sandra hadn't been in years. She asked about my work with genuine interest, made suggestions that showed she'd actually been listening, treated my opinions like they mattered. Around 3 o'clock, my phone started buzzing with texts from Sandra. Where are you? Please come home. We need to talk. I'm worried about you. Jake, please respond. Emma saw me reading the messages. She's panicking. Good. Maybe it's time she understood what it feels like to be ignored. That's not like you. Maybe the old me, but the old me let himself be walked on for 15 years. Emma smiled. I like the new you. Yeah? Well, the new me might do something really stupid. Like what? Like ask you to have dinner with me tonight. That would be stupid, Emma agreed, also inevitable. What time should I be ready? We agreed to meet at 7 at a restaurant across town, somewhere we were unlikely to run into anyone we knew. As I prepared to leave, Emma walked me to the door. Jake, she said, stopping me with a hand on my arm. Are you sure about this? Once we cross this line, there's no going back. I know. And you're okay with that? I thought about Sandra at home, probably pacing the kitchen and planning her next strategy for winning me back. I thought about 15 years of marriage, of shared history and mutual friends and a life built together. Then I thought about Friday night, about being humiliated in front of 50 people by the woman who was supposed to love and support me above all others. Yeah, I said, I'm okay with that. The drive home was surreal, like I was watching someone else's life from a distance. I was about to blow up my marriage for a woman I barely knew, and I felt more excited than guilty about it. Sandra was waiting for me when I walked through the front door, her face a mixture of relief and suspicion. Where have you been? I've been calling and texting for hours. I told you I had work stuff to catch up on. On Sunday, at 3 in the afternoon? Sandra, I don't owe you a minute-by-minute breakdown of my schedule. The sharpness in my voice caught her off guard. This wasn't the apologetic, conflict-avoiding Jake she was used to. I made dinner reservations, she said, for tonight, at Chez Laurent. I thought we could have a nice evening together, just the two of us. Chez Laurent was the restaurant where we'd had our first anniversary dinner, expensive and romantic and completely booked unless you planned weeks in advance. Sandra must have called in favors to get a table on such short notice. I can't tonight. I already have plans. Plans? What plans? With who? Does it matter? Sandra's face went pale. It's her, isn't it? It's Emma. I didn't answer, which was answer enough. Jake, please, don't do this. Don't throw away everything we have for some fantasy about my sister. What exactly do we have, Sandra? Really? We have a marriage. We have 15 years together. We have a life. Do we? Or do we have a habit? The words hit her like a slap. Sandra staggered backward, gripping the kitchen counter for support. I don't understand what's happening, she whispered. 3 days ago, we were fine. We were happy. Were we? Or were you just not paying attention? Jake, please. I know I made a mistake Friday night. I know I hurt you, but this isn't the answer. Running off with my sister isn't going to solve anything. Maybe not. But it might be better than staying here and pretending everything is fine when it's not. I headed upstairs to shower and change clothes, leaving Sandra standing in the kitchen. As I reached the top of the stairs, I heard her start to cry. Deep, wrenching sobs that might have broken my heart a week ago. Now they just sounded like the death throes of something that had been dying for a long time. I chose my clothes carefully that evening, the way a man does when he knows he's about to change his life forever. Dark jeans, a button-down shirt Sandra had always said made me look handsome, cologne I hadn't worn in months. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. Sandra was nowhere to be seen when I came downstairs. Her car was still in the driveway, so she hadn't left, but the house felt empty. I found a note on the kitchen counter written in her careful handwriting. Jake, I'll be at my mother's tonight. Please think about what you're doing. Please think about us. I love you. S. The note was signed with another heart, and this time it made me sad rather than annoyed. Sandra was fighting for our marriage the only way she knew how. but it was too little, too late. The restaurant Emma had chosen was perfect. Intimate without being romantic, upscale without being pretentious. She was already seated when I arrived, wearing a black dress that was elegant without trying too hard. She looked nervous, which was oddly comforting. At least I wasn't the only one who understood the magnitude of what we were doing. "You came," she said as I sat down across from her. "Did you think I wouldn't? I thought you might change your mind, come to your senses." Maybe I have come to my senses. Maybe that's the problem. The waiter appeared to take our drink orders, giving us a moment to settle into the surreal reality of our situation. Here I was, having dinner with my wife's sister while my marriage imploded at home. "How was Sandra when you left?" Emma asked after the waiter disappeared. "About as well as you'd expect. She's at her mother's, probably getting advice on how to win back her straying husband. And what advice do you think she's getting? To fight for me, to not give up, to remind me of all the good times we've had together?" Emma nodded thoughtfully. All good advice, under normal circumstances. But these aren't normal circumstances. No, they're not. The waiter returned with our drinks. Wine for Emma, whiskey for me. I needed something stronger than wine for this conversation. "Emma, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "Okay." "Is this real? What's happening between us? Or is it just revenge against Sandra for 15 years of being the responsible sister?" Emma was quiet for a long moment, swirling the wine in her glass. When she looked up, her expression was serious. "It's real, Jake. At least for me. I've had feelings for you for years, and Friday night just gave me permission to act on them. And if Sandra hadn't humiliated me at the party, would we be sitting here right now? Probably not. But she did humiliate you, and we are sitting here, and sometimes timing is everything." The waiter came back to take our food orders, interrupting the intensity of our conversation. After he left, Emma reached across the table and took my hand. "Jake, I can't promise you that this will work out between us. I can't promise you that leaving Sandra is the right decision, but I can promise you that you deserve better than what you have with her." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I've watched you for 15 years. I've seen how you light up when you talk about something you're passionate about, and I've seen how Sandra dims that light. I've seen how generous and kind and funny you are when you're comfortable, and I've seen how Sandra makes you doubt those qualities." Emma paused, choosing her words carefully. "Sandra sees you as a project, something to be improved and managed. I see you as a man worth loving exactly as you are." The words hit me harder than I'd expected. When was the last time someone had made me feel valued for who I was, rather than criticized for who I wasn't? "What happens next?" I asked. "If we do this, if we really do this, what happens with your family, with Sandra?" "I don't know. It'll be complicated and messy and probably ugly for a while. But Jake, life is short and uncertain, and spending it with the wrong person because it's safe is a waste of everyone's time." "Even if the right person is your sister's husband?" "Especially then." We ate dinner and talked about everything except the elephant in the room. What would happen when we left the restaurant? The conversation flowed easily, naturally, in a way it hadn't with Sandra in years. Emma was engaged and engaging, asking thoughtful questions and sharing stories from her own life that made me laugh. Around 9 o'clock, as we were finishing dessert, my phone buzzed with a text from Sandra. "Please come home. I need to see you. We can work this out." Emma saw me reading the message. "Second thoughts?" "No, but I should probably go home and face the music. This isn't something I can avoid forever." "I know, but Jake?" "Yeah?" "Whatever happens tonight, whatever you decide, I want you to know that these last few days have been some of the best I've had in a long time. Even though we're destroying your relationship with your sister. Sandra and I have had a complicated relationship for years. This might actually force us to be honest with each other for once." I paid the check and walked Emma to her car, both of us moving slowly, reluctant to end the evening. In the parking lot, under the glow of the streetlights, she turned to face me. "Jake, I'm flying back to New York tomorrow afternoon." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. "Tomorrow?" "I was supposed to leave yesterday, but I extended my trip. I can't extend it again without consequences at work. So this is it, tonight? Unless you want to come with me." The invitation hung in the air between us, impossible and tempting and completely insane. "Emma, I can't just run away to New York. I have a business here, a life. I know it's crazy. But the offer stands." She kissed me then, longer and deeper than the kiss in her hotel room. When we broke apart, I felt like I was drowning. "Think about it," she whispered. You have until tomorrow afternoon to decide what kind of life you want. The drive home was torture, my mind racing with possibilities and consequences. Emma was offering me a chance to start over, to build something new with someone who valued me. But it would mean leaving everything I'd built in 15 years, walking away from a life that was comfortable even if it wasn't fulfilling. Sandra's car was in the driveway when I pulled up, which meant she'd come back from her mother's. The living room lights were on, and I could see her silhouette moving around inside. I sat in my truck for a few minutes, gathering courage for what was likely to be the most difficult conversation of my life. Then I got out and walked to the front door, keys heavy in my hand. Sandra was waiting for me in the living room, still dressed but with her makeup scrubbed off and her hair pulled back. She looked exhausted and fragile, like she'd been crying for hours. "How was dinner?" she asked quietly. "Sandra." "With my sister." "How was dinner with my sister?" "It was good." "Good. That's all you have to say? Good?" I sat down in the chair across from her, maintaining distance. "What do you want me to say?" "I want you to tell me this is all some kind of midlife crisis. I want you to tell me you're confused and hurt and making bad decisions, but that you still love me and want to work things out." "I can't tell you that." Sandra's face crumpled. "Why? Jake, why can't you tell me that? What has she done to you?" "She hasn't done anything to me. She's just shown me what it feels like to be valued." "I value you." "Do you? Sandra, when was the last time you asked about my day without immediately changing the subject to yours? When was the last time you showed any interest in my work, my hobbies, my thoughts about anything that mattered to me?" "That's not fair. I've been busy with my own career, my own life." "Exactly. Your own life, not our life. Your life." Sandra stood up and started pacing, her bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. "So what? You're just going to throw away 15 years for some fantasy about Emma. You barely know her, Jake. You know me. You know us." "Do I? Because the woman I thought I knew wouldn't have humiliated me in front of 50 people for a cheap laugh? I was drunk. I made a mistake." "No, Sandra. You were honest. For the first time in years, you were completely honest about how you see me, how you see our marriage." "That's not true." "Isn't it? Tell me honestly. When you announced that you were single Friday night, wasn't there a part of you that meant it? A part of you that was tired of being tied down to boring old Jake?" Sandra stopped pacing and turned to face me, tears streaming down her face. "Maybe," she whispered. "Maybe there was. But that doesn't mean I don't love you. That doesn't mean I want to lose you. But it means you don't want to be married to me. Not really. I don't know what I want anymore." The admission hung between us like a bridge finally burning completely. We stared at each other across the wreckage of our marriage, both of us finally being honest for the first time in years. "Emma's leaving tomorrow," I said quietly. "And?" "And she asked me to come with her?" Sandra's face went white. "To New York?" "Yes. Are you going?" "I don't know." "Jake, please don't do this. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can work on our problems. We can—" "Sandra, stop." "No, I won't stop. I won't give up on us." "Then answer me one question. Honestly, do you love me?" "Yes." "Not the security I provide. Not the idea of being married. Not the fear of being alone. Do you love me, Jake Morrison, exactly as I am right now?" Sandra opened her mouth to answer, then closed it again. I could see her struggling with the question, trying to find an honest answer that wouldn't destroy everything. "I love who you could be," she said finally. The words hit me like a physical blow, confirming everything Emma had said about Sandra seeing me as a project rather than a partner. "That's what I thought," I said, standing up. "Jake, wait, that came out wrong." "No, it came out honest. Finally." I headed for the stairs, leaving Sandra standing in the living room. "Where are you going?" she called after me. "To pack." "You're leaving? Tonight?" "I'm leaving tomorrow, with Emma." The sound Sandra made was somewhere between a sob and a scream. I heard her collapse onto the couch as I climbed the stairs, but I didn't turn back. In our bedroom, my former bedroom, I pulled out a suitcase and started packing. Clothes, toiletries, a few personal items that mattered to me. Everything else could stay. I was starting over, and I didn't want to drag the past with me. Sandra appeared in the doorway as I was zipping up the suitcase. "This is really happening," she said. "You're really leaving me for my sister." "I'm leaving you for me. Emma just happens to be part of that decision." "What am I supposed to tell people? How do I explain that my husband ran off with my sister?" "Tell them the truth. Tell them you announced you were single, and I took you at your word." "That's cruel." "No, Sandra. What you did Friday night was cruel. This is just consequences." I carried the suitcase downstairs and set it by the front door. Sandra followed me, wrapping her robe tighter around herself. "Jake, please. One more chance. Give us one more chance." I turned to face her, this woman I'd been married to for 15 years, and felt something that might have been love or might have been pity. "Sandra, we've had 15 years of chances. Friday night was your last joke at my expense. I'm done laughing." I kissed her forehead gently, then picked up my suitcase and walked out the front door. Behind me, I heard Sandra start to cry again, but this time I didn't stop. This time, I kept walking toward whatever came next. Emma was waiting for me in the hotel lobby when I arrived at midnight, her own suitcase beside her chair. She looked up as I approached, hope and uncertainty warring in her expression. "So," she said. "New York?" "New York," I confirmed. She smiled then, the first completely genuine smile I'd seen from her since this whole mess started. "Any regrets?" she asked as we walked toward the elevator. "Ask me in a year." "Fair enough." As the elevator doors closed behind us, I thought about Sandra at home, probably calling her mother or her friends, trying to make sense of what had happened. I thought about the life I was leaving behind, the security and comfort of the familiar. But mostly I thought about the woman standing beside me, who had seen something in me worth fighting for, worth risking everything for. Maybe Emma was right. Maybe timing was everything. And maybe, for the first time in 15 years, my timing was perfect. The next morning, we flew to New York together, leaving behind a marriage that had died long before Friday night's party. Sandra's last joke had indeed been her last, because I was finally done laughing at myself. As our plane lifted off, I looked down at the city where I'd spent my entire adult life and felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Excitement about the future. Emma reached over and took my hand as we climbed toward the clouds. "No looking back," she said. "No looking back," I agreed. And for the first time in a very long time, I meant it.